Hello and welcome to the Heal Yourself with me, Sarah Dawkins podcast. We share people who've already healed themselves, along with health and wellness tips from myself. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Heal Yourself with me, Sarah Dawkins. And my guest today is Tomas Company, who is a life coach, a personal development mentor, a professional speaker, and a marketing executive. He's also the author of the book, The 3 Pillars for Real Success, a holistic framework to overcome your obstacles, achieve your goals, and be happy. After relocating from Germany to the US in 2017, he's suddenly faced with an incurable disease. Tomas embarked on a journey of personal transformation that impacted his mental, emotional, and physical health in more ways than he could ever imagine. By focusing on his expertise in coaching, business, mindset, and discipline, he achieved the impossible and healed himself. And today he pursues his purpose by using his story and learnings as a wake-up call for others to help them to create their real success. So welcome, Tomas.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So good for you to be on my podcast because your journey is quite extraordinary. Would you like to share it with our listeners?
Sure. Thanks for having me and happy to share my story. So let me give you some background info, which will explain why I got so sick, despite the fact that I always had a very healthy lifestyle, very active in sports, healthy nutrition. So it all most of our stuff always starts when we were little in the childhood. And I grew up as the son of immigrants in Germany. My parents came from Spain, which means I always looked different to everybody around me. After that, I realized that I was gay. Another element that made me struggle to see that everybody was different, or I was different to everybody else. And also my upbringing was very simple. My parents moved to Germany as guest workers, so they didn't have any education. And I'm sharing all this because all these elements, my parents not being able to help me at school, and I remember my mom in first class saying, "You're on your own." So I became a fighter from the very start, to always looking differently, speaking differently, and then also that sexual orientation, that element that came in a little later, the realization that made me think I wasn't enough. I kept comparing myself to everybody else, and I felt I was always behind everybody else. And the element of the sexual orientation led to a point that all I wanted was to be normal. I wanted to blend in. And I was so scared of admitting who I really was. So I played a role. I fought who I really was. And that was extremely difficult and painful. And it reached a level after 5 years of hiding and pretending and being careful what you wear, how you behave, how you speak. I then realized that I hated myself. Every time I looked in the mirror, I hated everything about me. And I reached a moment in my life in which I realized I either start loving myself and accepting myself the way I am, or I jump off a bridge. Luckily, I chose the first version, but it took me a long while and a long journey. My inner voice was telling me that I needed a change. And sorry, I'm sorry. Can you cut this out? Okay. So my inner voice was telling me that I needed a change. And I looked very successful to the outside. So because I became a fighter from when I was very little, I fought my way through, and I climbed up the ladder in my career to a level that nobody in my family ever had. So people around me were actually looking up to me. In church, I grew up in the Catholic Church. I was a very active member, part of the church, parish council, conducting the choir, teaching Sunday class. So people were always like, wow, your parents must be so proud of you. And every time they said that, it was like stabbing a knife into my heart, unconsciously, obviously, because I always thought if you really knew who I really am, you wouldn't say that. So I reached that level of looking very successful on the outside, but feeling very empty on the inside. And that was the first moment I followed my inner voice that was screaming for freedom, screaming for change. And I felt like I had to press a restart button to reach that happiness and freedom that my inner voice, my inner being was desiring. And I made the most difficult decision in my life, which was leaving everything behind that mattered to me, environment, family, friends, and moved to the US. I moved from our European headquarters in Germany to the US headquarters in Portland, Oregon, in the US. And I remember today sitting on the plane, looking out of the window and having such a cocktail of emotions of, wow, the unexpected, but also a lot of fear of the unknown, because I only knew 2 people in Portland at that time. And right when I thought I had found the solution to my obstacles, an even bigger obstacle started to sprout within me. 16 hours roughly after I landed, I woke up in my corporate housing with very, very high temperature. And I first thought, oh, I must have caught something on the plane. But shortly after, I realized this was something more serious. And I did have a partner back then that I just started this relationship with, living in Atlanta, 5 hours away from Portland, flight hours away from Portland. And on the third day, he's like, you need to call 911. I can't even understand what you're saying anymore. And I did that. The ambulance arrived. And when they got there, I was kind of half on the floor, half on the sofa, lost conscience, and felt huge relief when I heard them walking into my apartment. And all I was able to say was, please, I need help. The next thing I remember was waking up in the emergency room full of cables, and the nurse looking at me saying, thank God we almost lost you. I had no idea what was going on. I just felt horrible. And I then talked to the doctors, and they were like, look, you're doing better, but you're not doing good. We had to inject a lot of fluid into you. You actually didn't drink. It looks like you fainted during the last 3 days that often that I completely had lost track of time. And suddenly an interesting cycle started to occur within me. I felt super cold at the beginning. Then I started shaking. I started to have a high fever in the second phase. In the last phase, and I know this from these 2 friends that I mentioned before that came to visit me. So they reported this back to me, because I don't remember everything clearly, that in that third phase, I started to fight something and moan. And that's when they said, okay, we're going to remove you from the emergency room, but we need to hospitalize you. And this is when a week full of tests, uncertainty, and fear started. They mentioned so many possible diseases that I could be facing. And every test came back negative. Everything looked amazing, except that I didn't look amazing and I didn't feel amazing. Except one day where suddenly I felt okay, relatively okay, and they just released me. And one of my friends said, "Hey, you're going to stay with me because we don't want you to go back to, what you did with fainting and not knowing what was going on. So I will watch you." And that first night, I realized, oh, that cycle is coming back. I always was able to feel that, strangely enough, 20 minutes prior. So had time to get ready for bed, and I told him, I think it's coming back, and it did. On the second night, it got worse and worse. On the second night, I remember me opening my eyes and him sitting next to me crying. And he said, "It just breaks my heart to see you suffering like that, and there's nothing I can do." We went back to the doctors and said, "Look, my skin started to peel in the most disgusting way you can imagine on my hands and feet. And in that first 2 weeks, I had lost over 10 pounds, like immediately. And I really looked horrible, horrible. I have pictures that are shocking. And the doctor started to do some tests, and all my bones, my joints, they hurt so much. I couldn't even lift a glass of water. That's how much my shoulder would hurt. So he then wrote a list and said, "Look, these are 5 autoimmune diseases that I assume you're facing because you're showing symptoms of these 5 different diseases. But I have no idea." He's like, "I'm going to be very honest. We tested you on everything we thought you might have. That was all negative. And now you coming back, seeing that your situation has worsened, I'm going to send you to a bone specialist." I had to wait, unfortunately, over a week. In the meantime, I flew my parents in because I realized I needed help. And on the first night, my friend told me, they don't speak English, my parents. So he's like, "Please translate this." And he's like, "We need to warn your parents. It is really challenging to watch you and hear you at night." So I explained with the help of my friend, because as I said, sometimes I fainted at night. I wasn't aware of what I was doing either. And I was then explaining. My mom would sleep in my bed with me. And she's like, "I'm strong." And my mom is a strong woman. But I knew she didn't understand, and she would pretty soon. And it actually started. I'm like, "Mom, it's going to start soon." I got ready. And that's when I felt the pain kicking in to an extent that I just couldn't hold it back anymore. I started to scream. I started to cry. And after the 3rd or 4th week, my desperation, frustration was so big, including the pain, that I begged my parents to help me put an end to my life. And I literally meant it. I lost any kind of hope. And I then, the day came of this appointment with the specialist. We went there, the door opened, and that woman, the doctor, she walked in, and all I said was, "Please help me. You're my last hope," with tears in my eyes. And I showed her my hands, how disgusting they were looking. She read the report from the hospital and did her own tests. It took hours. This machine here, there. I had to undress myself. She touched my joints, which were my weak points, and pulled her hand back and said, "Oh my God, I think I know what you have." And that's when she explained to me that indeed, she also assumed that I was facing multiple autoimmune diseases. And the one that manifested the strongest is called adult Still's disease. And it consists of your immune disease dissolving your joints, hence the pain I was feeling. She even said, "You actually look like having already the highest level of arthritis, and I don't know how you can sit here without screaming." And I did say, I'm fighting really hard to control this pain. But at night, strangely enough, it was a lot worse. She gave me two options. She did say, though, look, that's not it. It doesn't have a cure. I can't give you anything to heal you. And that's pretty common with autoimmune diseases. And she said, two options. Either we put you on an artificial coma in the hope that your body will recover by itself, or I put you on a medical treatment with different medications that can have the effect of a chemotherapy that will not heal you, but at least we can focus on alleviating your pain. And that's all I wanted. And I didn't have to think much, because before I moved to the US, I already started to step into the world of quantum physics, epigenetics, the power of mind and positive thinking. And I knew immediately, I don't want that artificial coma option, because then I don't know what they're doing with me. I cannot control my mind. I don't know what's happening. And I shared that with her. At the same time, I told her, after she said that the dose she had to give me, specifically, it was prednisone. Usually people take 3 to 5 milligrams a day when they're on a therapy. She had to give me 60. And she did say, this will destroy your organs in the long term. So I did say, look, I don't want to die from this either. And obviously getting this kind of death sentence was very hard for me to digest. And I looked at her and said, I moved to the US to start a new life and not to end it. But I am a fighter. And for the first time, I said something to her I never said to anyone, not even to myself. Because I always felt so insecure, not being good enough and not good about myself. I looked at her and said, look, you don't know me. And it might sound weird to you now, but people that interact with me, especially friends, people that know me a bit better, always highlight three things. They always admire my positivity. They highlight my perseverance. And they say that they can see a light in me. And what I said for the first time was, while looking at her, I said, I want to believe in myself. And I want this light to shine bright again. And this was the start of my, I could call it, journey of transformation, without wanting to sound too spiritual, because that's what I actually went through. I asked her to help me reduce the medication steadily so I wouldn't die from that. And I would do the rest, and I would be willing to sign whatever it takes. I go home. I talked to my parents, and I didn't share the truth. I did say that whatever medication I was getting would heal me, because I knew that my dad was retired, my mom was still working, and I knew if she knew the truth, she wouldn't go back. She wanted to be with me, obviously. And my parents needed the money. I couldn't take that risk. So I asked them, you know what, you can go back. I'm feeling a little better. That was maybe 2 weeks later. And obviously my parents were like, no, we're here to help. And I said, look, I need to be independent. I appreciate all the help and the love, and I need that. But I also feel like I need to do this myself now. And I said, if it gets worse, I can always fly you back to me. The day I took them to the airport was so tough. Saying goodbye to them, we kissed and hugged each other, the three of us in a circle, and I just couldn't let go. Because deep inside me, I had this inner voice saying, what if you won't see them again? What if this is the last time you see them? I had to let go. They went through security. I went back to the car and cried. And that voice came back that repeatedly said, why me? Like back then when I realized I was different for my sexual orientation, for my looks, for my upbringing. This exact same feeling popped up, and I'm like, why me? When I entered my apartment after coming back from the airport, I was clear that the real fight was about to start. And this is when I hooked into my perseverance and determination. And now I'm cutting the middle part really short. 5 months later, I had the final check back with the doctor, and my partner came to visit me in Portland. So I'm not alone during this important appointment. And I felt a lot better. I was convinced that I was on the right path, but I didn't know for certain. The door opens, and by the way, my hands and feet had healed. And what I didn't tell her is that I went back to the gym and did yoga and did weights, and I was lifting more weight than before I moved to the US. So I then the door opens and I just said, hi. And she looked and said, oh my God, you look like a different person. And I looked at her and said, the other one you met before was the different person. This is me now. And she started to check on my body and everything she had to do. And she kept saying, this is not possible. This is not possible. And inside me, I was like, yes, yes, please, please, please. And she then asked me a question. She said, are you doing something or taking anything I'm not aware of? Because we promised to be transparent to each other. And I said, no, I follow what you told me. And we had phone calls in between because she said, there's no point of coming back because there's nothing she can do. So she then said, are you doing anything that I don't know? And I said, well, yes. And I'm happy to share, but don't declare me as crazy. And I revealed my little secret. And I told her, look, I went to bed for weeks without knowing if I would wake up the next morning. And that does crazy things to your mind. Despite the fact that I was positive and determined to fight it, I did have days of doubt. I did have days where I'm like, and what if you're wrong? And I told her, in those 5 months, I went through many lessons. I think the most important for me was gratitude. We take so many things for granted and hold on the things we don't have or the things we don't like about ourselves, instead of focusing that most of who we are and what we have are things we should be grateful for and others are actually desiring. And I told her that in the very early in the morning when I woke up still in bed, I would do a guided self-healing meditation. And the way I did it, I mean, YouTube is full of it. So I just YouTubed it and picked what, depending on the time I had available and wanted to dedicate to it and what sounded best to me, that's what I picked. So it was all about self-healing. I started my day with that meditation. So mentally, I fueled my batteries right in the morning. After getting up, I ran to the fridge. I had a calendar, 1 cell per day, the classical one. And with so much joy and happiness, I marked off the prior day, celebrating the opportunity I was given to start a new day and create it the way I wanted in a very conscious way, which I have never done before. I then also learned a lot about, obviously, exercise, nutrition. So I did do my exercise. And I learned a lot about juicing. So I got a slow masticating juicer, and alternated one day a green juice, one day a red juice, and put all the stuff in it. It wasn't yummy, trust me, but I didn't care. I just put so much ginger and turmeric and all that stuff in there, knowing that they had anti-inflammatory characteristics and healing properties. So I believed in it, and believe, now that I said it, is one of the superpowers that I try to implement and use. So while I was juicing, and it takes a long time to clean it, to cut it, to juice it, to clean the juicer, etc., I used that time to watch a lot of TED Talks, scientific talks on people that managed to heal themselves, to find I was hoping to find a common denominator and tools that I could use. I then went into a phase of my own meditation. I drank the juice. I lit a candle, and that's when I said to the doctor, that's when the witch arrived. I lit the candle and did my own meditation. And it was based on gratitude. And I focused on 3 areas: love, health, and abundance. And all of them, I used the technique of visualization and affirmations. And the trick was that as I was going through these 3 areas, especially the first one, which was health, I mean, lifting a glass was painful, but while I was doing that meditation, I was seeing and telling myself how strong I was. And the trick was that I was feeling it. So it was not just saying, "Oh, I'm healthy, I'm strong, I look good, I look healed," and whatever it was. It was feeling it. And I have to admit, it didn't always work, but very often. And for me, the sign was I got goosebumps, and you can't really control getting goosebumps. So when I was in that meditative state, visualizing myself healing, and I had many different techniques, same as love, many different techniques to evoke this feeling of love back into my heart. And the abundance, and abundance not only financially, but abundance in health, abundance in happiness, abundance in healthy relationships, abundance in satisfaction and love towards who I am and the life I want to live. And I always visualized it in a way that it felt so real to me. And because I knew that scientifically it has been proven that the brain doesn't make a difference if you're actually in that scene or if you're visualizing, but what counts is the emotions you evoke, and that makes it real. And after that meditation, I did more sports, and continued my day as usual. The only difference was that because I programmed a new me, when people asked me about how I was doing, I didn't use the terms of pain anymore. I was doing fine. I did not feed what was destroying me. So I refocused my thoughts, my actions, my words around who I wanted to become, which was a healthy person, somebody that had so many doors open, which was the reason that I moved here, that I pressed that restart button, somebody whose actions are based on gratitude and love, and somebody that believes in the abundance, that I can become the person I want to be and live the life I really want to live, which I call real success. So I shared all that with her, and even she had tears in her eyes and said, "You know what? I learned so much from you. And I'm not even sure if I'm allowed to say that, but you can stop taking any medications." And I looked at my partner. I teared up, and this was exactly the scene I had visualized in my meditation. And I'm like, are you serious? There was still this confirmation I needed to hear from her. And she's like, whatever you have been doing, continue to do that. And as much as I really learned to like and love you, I hope to not see you ever again. And we leave her office, and in the hallway, my partner and I just hugged each other, cried, and I kept thanking him because I left out in this interview everything he actually did, which was another proof of the power of the unconditional love, together with what my parents and my sister provided as the key people in my life and the foundation of love for me. And I kept thanking him, and he said, you know what? I actually didn't do anything. I You have to promise me one thing. Do not allow anybody anymore to make you feel you're not good enough. Because you've just proven that you're such a strong person that so many other people could learn from. And this then, all this process, all this mental and physical transformation I went through led to the discovery of my purpose. And my purpose is to be other people's wake up call. Because we so often wait to the last minute to make a change, whether if we're unhappy with our jobs, with a relationship, with the place we're living, whatever it is, because of fear, because of not wanting to step out of our comfort zone, because of whatever it is, we stick to our dissatisfaction and pain. And sometimes the wake up call can come too late, which almost was my case. And this purpose has ignited that desire within me to help other people. And that's why I founded my business called the Real Success Company as a life coach, where I use my book, The Pillars for Real Success, the 3 pillars for real success, um, to be others people wake up call and show them how they can overcome their obstacles, achieve their goals, to ultimately achieve that freedom and happiness they actually desire, which I then define as real success.
Thank you for sharing all that. And I do believe love really does heals everything. And we have that love. We've got to come back into ourselves and find that love for ourselves first before we can then give it out to the world. And that really struck me in your journey, that you had to come back in and find love for yourself, for who you are. And then the second key that I hear a lot is the belief. We have to believe that we can heal ourselves to be able to step into that. And once we do, once we've got that belief, the world's our oyster. We can step into anything. And as you've said, visualizations, whilst holding the emotions of that visualization and really feeling into that, helps us manifest.
Yes, totally
So
true. Totally
thank
true.
you for that. And quantum physics is so, we haven't even scratched the surface of it yet, have we? There's so much to learn, but we can tap into what we do know with that visualization, with that manifestation techniques. So thank you for all of that, Thomas.
Of course.
And for somebody who's going through what you've been through or something very similar, I know you've shared a lot of the techniques that you've used. Could you identify one small thing that somebody could do today on their own journey?
Yeah, I would say, let me suggest something very simple but powerful, something everybody can do. Pause. Pause every day in your day to day. Start with 5 minutes. Everybody can carve out 5 minutes in their day to day, no matter how crazy it is in your life. And dedicate that pause to what you need. And I'm speaking to people, not only to people that were in my case, right? my case is an example for everybody that feels dissatisfied without disease, but people that know I'm not happy, because not dedicating time to it can lead to a disease. So my advice would be, take your 5 minutes, make it a ritual. It will, after repetition, it will become a habit and so easy for you to do. And then you can build up 10 minutes, 15 minutes, or add tasks that are important to you. Do you need to learn to be calmer? Meditate. Do you want to be healthier? Exercise. Do you want to feel less lonely? Use it to build connections. Whatever it is that satisfies you, and that inner voice and desire you feel will contribute to your happiness, to overcoming your obstacles, and ultimately to your healing. Because you don't necessarily need to manifest a disease to have a disease. You might have it inside that hasn't either manifested yet, or for me already, dissatisfaction, frustration, sadness is a disease.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And anybody, as you say, can just hit that pause button and stop for those moments and become conscious, become present in your surroundings, and just be. Because we spend a lot of our time doing and not a lot of time just being. So we need to come back to be. Thank you. And where can people find you? Do you have a website?
Yes, it's realsuccess.company. So I'm here also playing with my last name, which is Company. And I'm on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn, either under Real Success Company, or my name, Tomas Company. And yeah, I've got here my book on Amazon, The 3 Pillars for Real Success.
Wonderful. Thank you for being a guest today on Heal Yourself and sharing your journey, Tomas.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And again, I don't take it for granted. And to everybody out there, thank you. And please believe in yourself. You have everything you need to overcome what you want to overcome and become the person you want to be.
Thank you. Thank you for listening. Please share this podcast with anyone who you think will benefit. And can you leave me a review wherever you've listened to it to help me reach more people? Thank you.